Hi folks, HR Funk here. Over the last couple of decades, one of the design features in handguns that's become very common is an equipment rail for the attachment of tactical illumination devices, just like the O-Light attached to my CZ-P01 here, and that's a very convenient design feature for anyone that might have to search a darkened area for a potential hostile threat. But there are still a lot of handguns, particularly older designs for semi-automatic pistols, and almost all revolvers that don't have a means for attaching any type of illumination device. And for anyone who might own that type of a handgun and still need to check that darkened area for a potential hostile threat, I thought it might be beneficial to go over some of the techniques that were used back in the day before most handguns had this type of an equipment rail. Back then it was common for us to be taught what were called flashlight techniques to be able to use with handguns. And I thought for any of you that own the older type handguns or own a revolver and you're going to use it for defensive purposes and you might have to search that darkened area, this might be something good for you to learn. Now in this video I'm going to cover 3 different flashlight techniques for use with your handgun, but before I get into the techniques I want to talk about the flashlights themselves. Specifically, the type of flashlight you carry has to be small enough that it can be easily manipulated as you're using these techniques, and you also have to be mindful of how the flashlight is activated. Some flashlights that are very popular for this type of use have an end cap with a pressure switch like this one that I can activate with my thumb. Other flashlights, like my older Streamlight Stinger back here, have a button on top that really is intended to be activated with probably your middle finger on your hand as you're using the flashlight. So think about this as I'm demonstrating these techniques, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, because if you're trying to use, for example, this technique that I'm going to show you in a moment, it's a little bit easier to activate the flashlight if it has a tail cap. Now you can still do it the other way, but you just need to make sure you know how to be able to effectively employ your flashlight. So now, let's get into the techniques themselves. This first technique, as I recall, was developed by the Los Angeles Police Department, and this is one that really does work better if you have a pressure switch on the tail cap of your flashlight. I'm going to take the flashlight and put it in my palm just like this, so the lens is facing to my right and the end cap is facing to my left. Now obviously this is for a right-hand shooter. If I was a left-hand shooter, it would be just the opposite. I suppose the easy way to remember this is you want the lens to be facing inboard and the activation switch on the tail cap to be facing outboard. Once you have the flashlight in that type of an orientation, you should be able to turn it to face toward the direction of your potential threat, just like this. So my thumb is pointed back toward my body and the lens of the flashlight is pointed away. When we add a handgun to this technique, what I'm going to be doing is putting the back of my support hand that's holding the flashlight against the back of my shooting hand that's holding the handgun. So I'm going to be in an orientation just like this, and I'm actually putting pressure against the back of both hands to help steady the handgun as I'm holding the flashlight. When I do this and I'm scanning, if I see an area that I want to illuminate, all I have to do is activate that pressure switch on the tail cap of the flashlight and I can illuminate that area. This is always one that I liked if I was doing a building clearing or a building search rather, because I can be moving tactically, going from cover to cover, and if I see an area that I want to check, it's very quick and easy to illuminate. The other nice thing about using any flashlight technique with a handgun is once you illuminate the area, even though you may be in a darkened environment yourself, you now are able to see the silhouette of your sights and hopefully fire a more effective shot if you need to take one. Again, this is probably the one that I use most often during building clearing. It's the one that I still like the best. One of the things I like about this is it's moving the flashlight as you operate with the flashlight away from the center line of your body. Bad guys can develop tunnel vision just like good guys, and it's not unheard of for a bad guy to focus in on a flashlight and take a shot while experiencing tunnel vision to the degree that they actually hit the flashlight. If the flashlight is right in front of the center line of your body, that could make for a bad day. So I tend to be very active when I'm using a flashlight, and I'm moving to make sure that I'm not just walking straight through a building or any other darkened environment with that flashlight right in front of my body. And as you can see, even with it oriented so, it's still somewhat off to the side. So it's not right in the center line of my body to draw potentially that hostile fire. So this is technique number 1. Now let's move to technique number 2. Technique number 2 really is better off with a flashlight that has a button to be activated on top, like the one on my Streamlight Stinger. And for this one, you're going to position the flashlight in your hand just the opposite of the technique I showed you before. This time the lens is going to be facing outboard and the tail of the flashlight is going to be facing inboard. The reason is because you're going to be turning the flashlight in this type of an orientation where now your thumb is facing forward and the end of the flashlight is facing or pointed back toward your body. In this one, this is a little bit like the old cup and saucer grip that was taught back in the day, where the flashlight is right underneath the firearm. This is similar to the orientation you get with a lot of the equipment rails, where if you need to illuminate an area, you're now going to be doing it just like this as you are checking that darkened environment. This one never feels quite as natural to me as the other one that I just showed you, but it is a different technique and it's something you might want to try out and see which one feels better for you. Another thing to be mindful of with a flashlight, particularly if you are moving through an environment where you believe there may well be a hostile threat, you don't want to walk through that environment with the flashlight illuminated all the time, giving away your position and letting someone take their time to decide exactly how they want to deal with you. If you're moving through that darkened environment and you really believe there's a threat there, you want to illuminate an area, check that for a threat, and then turn the flashlight off and move while the environment is dark. Normally, when you light up an area and the light goes off, mentally you still have an image of where everything was. So you can light that area, see a potential position of cover to move through, or to move to rather, and then move to that position of cover. Once you get there, take up your cover, illuminate the next area, check it for a threat, and then move to a position of cover there. So something to keep in mind if you are working with a flashlight. Again, you don't want to just walk through all the time with that light illuminated while you're checking the area. But again, technique number 2, you've got the handgun resting more or less right on top of the hand that's holding the flashlight. And the easiest way to do this is to actuate the flashlight with the thumb of your non-shooting hand. You can do it the other way, you can turn it over this way, but it's not nearly, it just feels a lot more awkward, I guess is the best way to say it. This way, of the 2 ways to do it, feels much better. So that's technique number 2. Technique number 3 is really more of a tactic than it is a technique. And if memory serves, it was developed by the FBI, and you recall a few minutes ago I was talking about the possibility of a bad guy experiencing tunnel vision, zeroing in on the flashlight for hostile fire. And technique number 3 was really developed to help alleviate the threat posed by that situation. And the idea is to hold the flashlight away from your body, and you should hold it slightly forward so that you don't illuminate the rest of your body with the light from the flashlight as you're doing this. So when we add a firearm to the mix, we're holding the flashlight in this type of an orientation forward and high, and the firearm itself is in a one-hand shooting grip as we're moving through that darkened environment. Again, we're using the light intermittently to eliminate the location of potential hostile threats as we're moving through there. Now, I really see this technique as probably being more beneficial if we're down behind a piece of cover, and I don't know if I can do this without repositioning the camera, so let me move that a little bit and I'll get down into a position. We'll just simulate that I'm behind cover and I'll hold the flashlight up to demonstrate what I'm talking about. So for demonstration purposes, we'll say that I'm down behind some impenetrable piece of cover, and prior to moving to my next position, I'm holding the flashlight up to illuminate that area that I'm going to move into, also checking it for a hostile threat. Obviously, if I'm doing this and I see a hostile threat, I can take a defensive action if I need to. So I think this is really probably the best use for technique number 3, rather than actually trying to hold the flashlight out as you're moving around, unless you really think somebody might take a shot at that flashlight. So there you have it, folks. 3 flashlight techniques you can use if your handgun doesn't have an equipment rail for the attachment of a tactical illumination device. And that's the video for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments, as always, make sure you forward those to me. Remember, if you purchase anything from Optics Planet, be sure to use my discount code, which is... And if you use that discount code, it's good for 5% off anything you purchase from Optics Planet. Also remember, warbirdbunker.com is making t-shirts for the channel. If you go to warbirdbunker.com, you can find my t-shirt there, and also lots of other patriotic and firearm themed t-shirts that Nathan there offers. And if you use my discount code, which is HRFUNK4U, you'll get 10% off anything you purchase from warbirdbunker.com. So see you next time, folks. Hopefully not in the dark. And until then, good shooting. Bye-bye.